What happens when one of Britain's most beloved comedy legends walks onto a daytime talk show and gets blindsided by a host who thinks she can say whatever she wants? In just 46 seconds of one particular exchange, Denise Welch would go from confident presenter to the most hated woman on television. This is the story of how Rowan Atkinson got kicked off Loose Women after refusing to be disrespected. The atmosphere in the studio that morning was electric. Rowan Atkinson, the man behind Mr. Bean and Blackadder, had agreed to appear on Loose Women to discuss his latest project. The audience was buzzing with excitement. They were about to witness something that nobody could have predicted, something that would make headlines for weeks. Rowan walked onto the set with his characteristic shy smile. The audience erupted in applause. They loved him. Everyone loved him. He sat down on the famous purple couch, straightening his jacket as the cameras focused on him. Denise Welch, sitting at the head of the panel, leaned forward with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Well, Denise began, her voice dripping with something that wasn't quite warmth. Look who decided to grace us with his presence. Rowan Atkinson, everyone. The audience clapped again, but Rowan looked slightly uncomfortable. He nodded politely. Thank you for having me, he said quietly. Denise waved her hand dismissively. Oh, we're thrilled. Really? I mean, it's not every day we get someone who peaked in the 90s, is it? The studio went quiet. You could hear a pin drop. The other panelists shifted in their seats. Rowan's smile faded just a fraction, but he maintained his composure. I'm still working, actually, he replied calmly. I have a new film coming out. Yes, we'll get to that, Denise interrupted, flipping her hair. But first I have to ask, Mr. Bean. I mean, come on, a grown man playing a character who can't even speak properly. Don't you think that's a bit? I don't know. Beneath someone with your education. Rowan blinked. The audience was dead silent now. This wasn't the friendly banter they'd come to expect from Loose Women. This was something else entirely. Mr. Bean is a character that brings joy to millions of people around the world, Rowan said, his voice still measured. Physical comedy is an art form. Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, these were masters of their craft. Denise laughed, but it wasn't a nice laugh. Oh, so you're comparing yourself to Charlie Chaplin now. That's quite bold, isn't it? One of the other panelists tried to jump in. Denise, I think what Rowan is saying. I'm talking. Denise snapped, cutting her off. She turned back to Rowan. You know what I think? I think you've been writing the coattails of one character for 30 years. One character that doesn't even talk. My 6-year-old could do that. The audience gasped. Rowan sat up straighter, his jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. That's quite disrespectful, he said quietly. I've worked very hard throughout my career, not just on Mr. Bean, but on many projects that require significant skill and preparation. Disrespectful, Denise repeated, her voice rising. Disrespectful? You want to talk about disrespect? You know what's disrespectful? Making people pay good money to watch you pull faces for 90 minutes. That's what's disrespectful. Another panelist tried again. Maybe we should talk about the new film in a minute, Denise said sharply. She was locked onto Rowan now like a predator. I'm just being honest here. Isn't that what this show is about? Honesty. And honestly, Rowan, I've never understood the appeal. I've never found Mr. Bean funny. Not once. And I'm not alone. Plenty of people think it's overrated garbage. The word garbage hung in the air. Rowan's expression changed. The polite mask slipped just a little. His eyes went cold. I see, he said slowly. So, you invited me here to insult my life's work? I invited you here to have a conversation, Denise shot back. But if you can't handle criticism, maybe you should go back to pulling funny faces in the mirror. That was it. That was the moment. Rowan stood up. The audience gasped again, louder this time. He calmly removed his microphone and placed it on the couch. I don't need to sit here and be insulted by someone who clearly has no respect for the craft of comedy, he said, his voice firm, but not angry. You may think you're being clever or edgy, but you're simply being rude. Denise's face went red. Sit down, she commanded. You can't just walk off my show. Your show, Rowan said, raising an eyebrow. I was under the impression this was a panel show, not the Denise Welch hour, and I absolutely can walk off. Watch me. He turned toward the exit. Denise stood up too, her voice getting shrill. You are being incredibly unprofessional right now. Do you know how many people would kill to be on this show? Rowan stopped and turned back. Then perhaps you should treat your guests with the respect they deserve instead of using them as punching bags for your own amusement. I was just having a laugh, Denise protested. Can't you take a joke? I thought you were a comedian. A joke requires wit, Rowan said coldly. What you were doing was just mean-spirited and cruel. There's a difference. The other panelists were frozen. The cameras kept rolling. Nobody knew what to do. This had never happened before. Guests didn't just walk off loose women. Not like this. If you walk out that door, you're never coming back on this show, Denise shouted. Rowan paused at the edge of the stage. I assure you that is not the threat you think it is. And with that, he walked off. The audience didn't know whether to clap or sit in shocked silence. Most of them did both. A few people started applauding, and then more joined in, and suddenly the entire studio was giving Rowan a standing ovation as he disappeared behind the plotting curtain. Denise stood there, her mouth hanging open. She looked at the cameras, then at her fellow panelists, then back at the cameras. Her face was bright red. Well, she said, trying to laugh it off, looks like someone can't handle a bit of banter. But her voice was shaking. The audience wasn't buying it. You could see it in their faces. They weren't on her side, not even close. One of the producers rushed onto the stage, whispering urgently in Denise's ear. She nodded stiffly and sat back down. The other panelist looked deeply uncomfortable. We're going to take a quick break, Denise announced, her smile looking more like a grimace. Don't go anywhere. But backstage, things were getting worse. Rowan was in his dressing room gathering his things. A producer knocked frantically on his door. Mr. Atkinson, please can we talk about this? Rowan opened the door, his coat already on. There's nothing to talk about. I came here in good faith to discuss my work, and instead I was subjected to personal attacks. I won't stand for it. Denise can be. She has a very direct style. The producer stammered. She didn't mean. She meant every word, Rowan interrupted. And that's fine. She's entitled to her opinion, but I'm also entitled to not sit there and be her verbal punching bag for the entertainment of the audience. Please, the producer begged. Just come back out. We'll steer the conversation in a different direction. You can talk about your film. Denise will apologize. Rowan shook his head. No, the damage is done. I'm leaving. Back in the studio, the break was over. Denise was back on air and she was not happy. Well, as you can see, Rowan Atkinson has decided he's too important to continue with our show, she said, her tone bitter. Apparently he can dish it out with his comedy, but he can't take it when someone has an opinion about his work. The audience was silent, stone-cold silent. It was clear they didn't agree. Another panelist finally spoke up. To be fair, Denise, you were quite harsh. Denise whipped around. Harsh? I was being honest. This is loose women. We're supposed to speak our minds. There's a difference between speaking your mind and being cruel, the panelist said quietly. Oh, not you too, Denise exclaimed. I cannot believe everyone is taking his side. He's the one who walked off. He's the one who couldn't handle a simple conversation, but the audience had heard enough. Someone in the crowd shouted, You are horrible to him. Denise's eyes went wide. Excuse me? More voices joined in. You should apologize. That was so rude. Leave him alone. Denise looked genuinely shocked. This was her show, her audience. They were supposed to be on her side, but they weren't. Not today. I think we need to move on, another panelist suggested desperately. Let's talk about our next topic. But Denise wasn't done. No, I want to address this. Rowan Atkinson walked off this show because he couldn't handle a bit of criticism. That's the truth. And if people want to defend him, fine. But I stand by everything I said. The audience groaned. Someone booed. Actually booed. Denise's face went from red to purple. Did someone just boo me on my own show? It's not just your show, one of the panelists muttered. What did you say? Denise demanded. Nothing, the panelists replied quickly. Let's just move on. But the atmosphere was poisoned. The rest of the show was a disaster. Denise was defensive and snappy. The other panelists were walking on eggshells. The audience was cold. Every topic they tried to discuss fell flat because everyone was still thinking about what had happened with Rowan. Meanwhile, backstage, one of the crew members caught up with Rowan as he was leaving the building. "Mr. Atkinson, I just wanted to say I'm really sorry about what happened in there. You didn't deserve that." Rowan smiled, a genuine smile this time. "Thank you. That's very kind." "For what it's worth," the crew member continued, "everyone back here is on your side. What Denise did was out of line." "I appreciate that," Rowan said. "I don't enjoy confrontation, but there comes a point where you have to stand up for yourself. You absolutely did the right thing," the crew member assured him. "Everyone knows it." Rowan nodded and headed for the exit. As he stepped outside, a few fans who had been waiting recognized him and rushed over. "Mr. Atkinson, are you okay? We heard what happened." "I'm fine," Rowan assured them. "Thank you for your concern. What she said to you was disgusting." One fan said angrily, "You're a legend. She had no right." Rowan smiled sadly. "Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I just chose not to sit there while mine was being attacked." The fans applauded. One asked for a photo. Rowan obliged because that's the kind of person he is. Even after being humiliated on national television, he still had time for the people who actually appreciated his work. Back in the studio, the show finally ended. As soon as the camera stopped rolling, chaos erupted. The producers were furious, not at Rowan, but at Denise. "What were you thinking?" one producer demanded. "You just chased off one of the biggest names we've ever had on this show." "He couldn't take a joke," Denise insisted, but her voice lacked conviction now. "That wasn't a joke," the producer shot back. "That was bullying on live television." The other panelists quietly gathered their things and left. Nobody wanted to be around Denise right now. She stood there alone on the set as the crew packed up around her. One of the camera operators walked past and muttered, "That was painful to watch." Denise heard it. "What did you say?" The camera operator stopped. "I said that was painful to watch." "Because it was. You went after that man for no reason." "I was doing my job," Denise said weakly. "No," the camera operator replied. "Your job is to interview guests, not attack them. Rowan Atkinson is a good man who's brought joy to millions of people, and you treated him like garbage. That's not entertainment. That's just cruel." And with that, the camera operator walked away. Denise stood there in the empty studio. The lights were being turned off one by one. The audience was gone. The other panelists were gone. Even the producers had disappeared to their offices to deal with the aftermath. For the first time, Denise seemed to realize what she'd done. But it was too late. The damage was irreversible. Within hours, clips of the confrontation were everywhere. Social media exploded. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, every platform was flooded with people defending Rowan and criticizing Denise. The hashtag was trending worldwide. People who had never even watched Loose Women were watching the clip and expressing their outrage. Comments poured in by the thousands. Denise Welch should be ashamed of herself. Rowan Atkinson handled that with such class. This is why nobody takes Loose Women seriously. Imagine being so insecure that you have to tear down a comedy legend. The backlash was swift and brutal. Major news outlets picked up the story. Entertainment websites ran articles. Comedy legends came out of the woodwork to defend Rowan. One famous comedian tweeted, "Rowan Atkinson is one of the greatest physical comedians of our generation. What happened on Loose Women today was disgraceful." Another wrote, "There's a difference between tough questions and mean-spirited attacks." Denise Welch crossed a line today. Even people who weren't in the entertainment industry weighed in. Teachers, doctors, construction workers, everyone had an opinion, and almost all of them were on the rowing side. The Loose Women producers called an emergency meeting. They knew they had a crisis on their hands. The show's reputation was in tatters. Sponsors were calling, asking questions. The network executives were furious. They released a statement. "We regret the way today's interview unfolded." Loose Women prides itself on honest conversation, but we acknowledge that today's exchange crossed a line. We have reached out to Mr. Atkinson to apologize, but it wasn't enough. People wanted more. They wanted accountability. Denise, meanwhile, had gone silent on social media. Her usual stream of posts and comments had stopped completely. She was hiding, and everyone knew it. One of her fellow panelists, who had tried to defend Rowan during the show, posted, "Today was difficult. I believe in honest conversation, but I also believe in respect. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, especially our guests." It was a diplomatic statement, but everyone knew what she was really saying. She was distancing herself from Denise. The next day, rumors started circulating. Would Denise be fired? Would she be suspended? Would she apologize? The Loose Women's social media accounts were being bombarded with comments. Thousands upon thousands of people demanding that Denise be removed from the show. She's toxic. She ruins every episode. Get rid of her. The show's producers were in a difficult position. Denise had been with Loose Women for years. She was a core part of the panel, but the public backlash was unlike anything they'd ever seen. Meanwhile, Rowan's representatives released a brief statement. Mr. Atkinson appreciates the support he has received. He stands by his decision to leave the interview. He believes all professionals should be treated with respect, regardless of the forum. It was measured. It was classy. It was everything Denise's behavior had not been. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. Rowan had taken the high road. He hadn't lashed out on social media. He hadn't given angry interviews. He had simply stated his position and moved on. Denise, on the other hand, was spiraling. Friends close to her said she was devastated by the backlash. She hadn't expected this level of response. She thought people would see it as just another day on Loose Women where the panelists speak their minds. But she had miscalculated badly. There's a difference between speaking your mind and being cruel. The public understood that, even if she didn't. Finally, 3 days after the incident, Denise broke her silence. She posted a statement on social media. "I want to address what happened on Monday's show. Upon reflection, I realized that my comments to Rowan Atkinson were out of line. I was trying to create engaging television, but I went too far. I never intended to hurt or disrespect him. I have the utmost respect for his work and his contributions to comedy. I sincerely apologize to Rowan and to everyone who was upset by what they saw. It was an apology, but it felt hollow. The phrase trying to create engaging television rubbed people the wrong way. It sounded like an excuse. The comments on her post were brutal. Too little, too late. You're only apologizing because of the backlash. You showed your true colors. Rowan deserves better than this. Some people accepted the apology, but most didn't. The damage was done. The show's ratings told the story. The next episode of Loose Women after the incident saw a significant spike, but only because people were curious about whether Denise would address it on air. She did, giving a brief apology at the start of the show, but it was awkward and uncomfortable. The following week, ratings dropped hard. People were tuning out. The incident had left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. Sponsors started pulling out. Not dramatically, not all at once, but quietly, one by one. Nobody wanted to be associated with what had happened. The network executives made their decision. Denise would not be fired, but she would be taking an extended break from the show. It was framed as a mutual decision, a chance for her to focus on other projects. But everyone knew what it really was. It was a suspension, a punishment, a consequence. When the news broke, reactions were mixed. Some people thought she should have been fired outright. Others thought the break was appropriate. A few defended her, saying the punishment was too harsh, but the overwhelming consensus was clear. Denise had brought this on herself. Rowan, for his part, said nothing publicly about Denise's suspension. He didn't gloat. He didn't celebrate. He simply went back to work promoting his film and continuing with his career. That's the difference between a professional and someone who just thinks they are one. The other Loose Women panelists tried to move forward. They brought in guest hosts to fill Denise's spot. They tried to recapture the magic the show once had, but it was difficult. The shadow of that day hung over everything. In the world of television, respect matters. Guests trust that when they come on a show, they'll be treated fairly. They expect tough questions. Sure, they expect to be challenged, but they don't expect to be attacked. Rowan Atkinson understood his worth. He understood that no amount of